Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining the Boardroom Club today to our innovation conference featuring executives from top tech companies across AI, analytics, cyber, fintech, CRM, and quantum computing. My name is Yossi Garmazi, second year MBA here at Cornell, and I'm joined here also by a schoolmate and a good friend of mine, Oren Renard. Oren?
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so today we are fortunate enough to interview none other than Nir Minerbi, co-founder and CEO of Classiq, a company that revolutionizes the quantum computing world by simplifying the process of creating quantum algorithms. Most recently, they raised $110 million, which is the largest ever quantum software funding round. So Nir, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, so Nir, I thought to start by asking you, first of all, what led you to the tech world and specifically to the quantum computing field?
So before Classiq, I spent 10 years in the Israeli intelligence community, a Talpiot program, which is 3.5 years of academic and technical leadership courses and program. After that, I spent another 6 years across different intelligence units, mainly in the cybersecurity field, leading research and software teams. After that, joined forces with one of my best friends, Amir, also an alumni of the Talpiot program. We knew for quite a while that we want to establish something. We didn't know that it's going to be quantum. We had several months of ideation phase, explore different fields. Not cyber, actually. We knew that we want to do something else, and eventually we understood it's a perfect timing to create something big in quantum. Alongside our third co-founder, Yehuda Naveh, we established this company.
Amazing. As you mentioned, many Israeli companies go into the cyber field, but quantum computing is a different one. So I was just wondering if you can explain us quantum computing for those unfamiliar with the space, if you can explain it in simple terms, and specifically why is regarded so revolutionary by many as the holy grail of computing.
So first, quantum computing is not a new field, right? It was envisioned since the 80s, and it was quite clear that if and when someone succeeded to develop a full-scale quantum computer, it is revolutionary because there are problems, actually many problems, that classical computers just struggle with. And for most of the problems, classical computers are fantastic. We know that, right? We use them for anything, right? But I think it's good to think of it a little bit like a marathon, a world record, right? It's improving all the time, several seconds every year or so, but a human being will never run a marathon, in half a second. It's unlikely, right? This is not the type of things we are built to do. So in the same way, there are things classical computers are unlikely to do. And that was the motivation for quantum computing, because with quantum computers, we could unlock trillions of dollars in value creation across all big industries, actually. And the initial motivation came from, chemistry, material science, pharmaceuticals, but more and more quantum algorithms were developed. And now we understand that it's bigger. It's actually a new era in computing that is going to disrupt any large industry.
Amazing. And from cryptography to solving complex physics problems, what are the biggest area quantum computing can disrupt, by your opinion?
There is a nice McKinsey report that we can share with the audience, covering different use cases across different industries, from automotive, finance, oil and gas, telecommunications, cybersecurity, pharma, and so on and so on. And the accumulative value creation across these industries from quantum is estimated by $2 trillion. So this is big in any industry. And we know what are the use cases, right? From in silico drug discovery to simulating engines in a way that will allow you to develop engines that consume, let's say, 50% of the fuel, and yes, breaking all of the known RSA encryption, which is a earthquake in cybersecurity and generally the IT field. But there are many of them, and I think that the more exciting thing to say here is, if we asked someone at the 50s, right, what would be the killer application of a classical computer with billions of transistors, the answer would have been a great calculator, not ChatGPT or Google and so on. So with quantum, we are in actually a better situation because before the hardware is actually here at scale, we know, right, proved that these use cases will create this revolution. But obviously, this is nothing. We are going to see so much more. And I think this is a new era in computing, and this is the reason, all of this excitement is about.
Definitely. And can you share with the audience what are some of the unique challenges involved in starting a company in the quantum computing field and how Classiq different from any other startup?
Before diving into what we do, I can say one thing that is a bit general about deep tech startups. I think there are many different definitions for deep tech, right? But my definition is when 50% of investors tell you that you are much too early, and the other 50% tell you it's too late already, and none of them want to invest. This is deep tech, and probably this is exactly the right timing to establish a company. And this is kind of what we felt in quantum software. We established this company 5 years ago, and hardware was early. And the arms race we are seeing today to realize quantum computers, between the tech giants, Google, IBM, Microsoft, Amazon, Intel, and so many others, dozens of different companies and governments and startups. That was very early, right? So quantum computers had 10, 15 qubits, which are the kind of, quantum bits, quantum transistors. It was early. But what was clear for us was if, this field matures and the momentum will accelerate, software will be needed because there wasn't any quantum software stack, right? All of the things we are taking as grant for the classical software stack, like operating systems and compilers and development environments and programming languages, none of this existed in quantum, and that also wasn't needed because there were in quantum computers very few end users. But our vision was, okay, this software will be needed. That could be huge. You can possibly create the Microsoft of a new era in computing. So we started early. Our bet was on the quantum hardware development and the market maturing, and that was the bet. And the reason currently we have a very good momentum is the bet was apparently a good one because the momentum across the quantum industry is accelerating fast. We see enterprise adoption, national quantum programs across governments, hundreds of universities establishing quantum computing courses. So the time for quantum software is now, and this is what we do. So this is kind of the general story about establishing this company. There are many challenges, in raising funding for deep tech and less mature markets because the metrics are not the usual ones. And let's take an example. Let's say that you build a space company, right? That should I don't know, do something very sophisticated in Mars when we get there. Obviously, in the first few years, you have no revenues. If an investor will ask you what your ARR, your fair answer would be, I'm not familiar with the expression, right? But it's a challenge. You need a narrative. You need a good reason why you do that right now, why it could be huge, and why investors shouldn't measure you on the usual, metrics. So this is another challenge.
Absolutely. So definitely different metrics, and but you got to risk it at the end. And one last question for myself before we moving on to Oren, that gonna do a little bit deep dive into your product. So Nir, how does Classiq adapt to the advancement in quantum computing, and how quickly is the field evolving these days?
So it's a little bit the other way around. We started early and we always targeted the next generation of quantum hardware. So we were there ready with the software, and our customers were ready with the use cases and applications, and now the hardware is catching up. So what we create is the scalable technology for quantum software and the market adoption, right, becoming the standard. And now as the hardware is evolving and catching up with us, so we are in a perfect position to bring, amazing value to our customers. And another possible solution would be, to 5 years ago, target the software to the existing quantum computers. That could be nice because we had a better market for at that time. We hadn't, have any customers for the first 3 years of the company. Now we have many dozens because we made this bet. So I think there are different possible plays, but we chose, to learn from takeaways, by the way, from Microsoft that always targeted the next and next generation of hardware, and it felt like a better, positioning and strategy.
And looking forward to see what Classiq bring next and keep revolutionizing the field. So Nir, thank you so much. I have a bunch of other questions, but Oren here, my friend, has also great question for you. So Oren, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Yossi. So I was wondering, because now you described how you develop quantum computers, right? And you develop the software stack, right? Before the hardware is commercially available. And that's very different from what happened in the software case in the classical computers. So I'd be very happy if you can walk us through these challenges here.
There was only one nice thing about the quantum software stack, and it was the foundation wasn't invented by human. It was dictated by nature. Quantum computers are basically realizing the hardware that acts like nature is doing, right? So quantum software is actually the way nature works, and the underlying logic is the solution for the Schrodinger's equation, which is the best way we can describe nature today. So in a way, developing a quantum software stack, so you know exactly how to do that because you know how this logic works. And then there are two challenges. One is to realize the hardware that can capture this logic and these operations. And the second one is, developing a new software stack that has nothing to do with the classical software stack we are familiar with. And our method was bringing the best of the best of, classical solutions, operating system technologies, compilation technologies, design automation technologies, modeling technologies into the evolving quantum software stack. So we didn't want to invent anything that is not necessary, and the core technology is enabling the evolving quantum software stack with as many classical technologies as possible.
Interesting. So in this sense that there are more quantum software startups today, can you speak a little bit about the competitive landscape? Who are the major players in the scene?
So there are several smaller startups, good ones, by the way, like Horizon Quantum from Singapore, QCware from the US. But our one competition, as we see it, is IBM. IBM has learned its lesson from early stages of computing when they lost basically the software leadership to Microsoft. IBM is a leader in quantum computing. They develop state-of-the-art quantum computers and also a software stack called Qiskit. And when we established this company, Qiskit was already there. And our challenge was not to compete with Qiskit because Qiskit is dedicated for small scale machines, but to build the next layer, the operating system layer, the abstraction layer. And today we are not exactly competing with Qiskit because Qiskit is we generate Qiskit, so we are one layer on top of that. But when a new enterprise customer signs working with us as a software provider, before that, they worked with Qiskit. So in this sense, IBM is a competitor. It's also a partner. So this is kind of the landscape we see today. And of course, and this is most important, this layer of quantum operating system and being the interface for end users is strategic for everyone, right? This is what enables us to have amazing partnerships with all of the hyperscalers and all of the service providers, working with so many large enterprise customers like BMW and AT&T and Wells Fargo and HSBC and Toshiba and many others. But of course, competition will arrive. And our key question for ourselves, and also this is the reason we raise significant funding right now, is not if competition will be here, it will be, but what will be our position? And our answer is a standard. So this is the reason it's not now only about the technology and the product, but also about very aggressive go-to-market, adoption, having the largest developer community, and so on. A bit long answer, sorry for that, but I hope it captures the essence.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that in that sense, we're all would be happy to hear from you about what are the current quantum products, especially given that there are only a limited number of qubits available, right?
Let me show you that. I think it will be nice to see. So what I'm going to show you right now is how you do something very simple on paper, right? I'm going to describe the most simple, quantum program you can think of. I define 3 quantum registers, X, Y, and Z, and I do some very simple arithmetic expression on them. Now, in classical computing, this is nothing. Every developer can do that. In quantum computing, when you compile it, and now the operating system and the compiler are coming to play, this is our core technology, we'll see that the program that is actually being created is quite complex, and you can open it, you can analyze it. This is what we call a quantum circuit. This is just like saying quantum program. And you remember that I said before that before we established this company, the development was limited to gate level programming. You actually needed to know how quantum gates, like in classical computing, we have XOR, NAND, and OR gates, but we don't really care about them because we have so much abstraction. In quantum, we don't have that. So as a developer, right, whether you're a quantum expert or a software developer with no quantum expertise, if you want to develop such a small functionality, only 5 lines of code, you need to be able to describe so many gates, which is obviously impossible for anyone, even for quantum experts, definitely for non-quantum experts. And this is the place for abstraction. Now, that was a very simple example. If we go to, the state of the art of quantum computers today with, hundreds of qubits already, so you see that it's getting even more complex. And this is not just something that no human being can do without automation. So this is what we do. Now, to the question, let's say I actually want to run this, program I created, so I can choose, and here you see many quantum programs, right? Many quantum products, sorry, by many providers. So let's say I want to run on a real quantum computer. So you see that we are integrated with many different providers. So IBM is a key provider. You can choose any of their available quantum computers. You can see that it's online. It's a quantum computer located in the US, and you can actually run on it. It's live, but there are also other, quantum clouds like by Microsoft, Azure Quantum, by Amazon, Amazon Bracket. I mentioned some of the hardware companies are public companies like IonQ, and so on and so on. So I think the quantum software stack is evolving in a way that, it's about hardware, it's about software, and about, other layers of the stack like hybrid, quantum, and classical. This is what we do with NVIDIA and with HPE, like quantum clouds that give access to end users, like I've showed you right now. And I think over time, there will be many companies that are focused on the applications. This is what we see our customers doing today. All of the large, big enterprises that have their own quantum teams and they work on their quantum applications. We will see more and more of that.
Very interesting. And I think that it's related to one of your recent announcement about managing to compress up to 97% quantum circuits. And I definitely know to evaluate and appreciate this result, but maybe you can explain also to everyone else here about this achievement.
As you remember, I just show you a quantum program, right? Eventually, these gates, right? So this is what I run on the hardware. Now, the key question is for a specific functionality. Let's say I want to run, a portfolio optimization of a problem with quantum computer, or I want to develop a new drug. So I know the functionality. This is the short, code I showed you. And now the key question is, can I run it on a quantum computer? Because quantum computers are still limited, right? They have small number of qubits and the number of operations you can apply on them is still limited. This is the reason that we are not yet in the production phase. Currently, the most powerful quantum computers are as strong as the most powerful supercomputers for specific problems. The first stage is what we call quantum advantage, where quantum computer will actually bring commercial advantage in a significant problem. Now, when you think of, when will it happen? So I think there is a point that two different, we will meet this point by hardware development and software development, in a sense that for the same functionality, if you use less qubits, so you will have this advantage even 2 years before. And this is the reason this 90% reduction of, qubit count and number of gates and so on, this is so important for end users because for a specific application, it could enable advantage several years before. And this is the reason that was, published. The comparison was with the IBM solution called Qiskit. And that was done by Deloitte Japan and Mitsubishi Chemical, two important customers and partners. And we hope to see many, many more of these results in the coming months.
And how do you convince customers without prior understanding of quantum computing to transition into the field?
So I think it's interesting to see among our enterprise customers two main types. So first, we have customers across different industries. It's not really different for us if we sell software licenses for a pharma company or a big bank or a telecommunication company. This is from the value proposition perspective, it's quite the same. But what is very different is if the customer already have a quantum team, and then it's easy because they know what they do. They develop, let's say, with the IBM Qiskit today or with other platform, and then they do short evaluation. They see that they can get dramatically better result, to develop much faster, to access more quantum computers. That's easy because they know how to evaluate. I don't know if more, but another interesting case is enterprises that had no quantum activity. And actually, some of our biggest customers, Fortune 100 companies, had no quantum activity. And the reason they work with us is this is the only platform that allows them to do that without quantum experts. They don't want to have, quantum computing PhDs and postdocs. Maybe they want them, but they prefer to have people from their own, business units, software developers, to develop their quantum applications. And due to the level of abstraction I showed you, so they can do that with us. So this is a different type of a customer. Usually we are not taking the position of, telling them why quantum is important, because most of the times they know that we already work with, partner with many of the large service providers, system integrators that are doing this education before we come. And I think it's this way the adoption is easier for everyone.
Okay. And can you also, in this sense, elaborate a little bit about your go-to-market strategy here, or how you bring quantum solutions to the market? when is the right timing?
So first, you can think of us as operating system for quantum computers. It means that our end customer is anyone that wants to develop quantum software today or in the future. It doesn't matter what is the underlying hardware because the software is completely hardware agnostic. And our key goal is to become the industry standard before this industry shifts to production. And it dictates the go-to-market. So the go-to-market is first direct sales, directly coming to these big enterprises, selling them software licenses with some training. This is one avenue. Another avenue is indirect, working with the Deloittes and the KPMGs and the Toshibas of the world to jointly go to market. They use our platform to sell to their customers, and this is a very effective indirect channel. The third one is OEM. Deeply integrate our platform, the operating system, at the core of other quantum stacks, right? This is what we do with NVIDIA, with Microsoft, with Amazon, with Google, with Intel, with other companies like Wolfram Mathematica and so on. And it makes the go-to-market very easy because this is the same product, fully integrated. So we have, we had recently a joint announcement with NVIDIA and BMW. BMW is a joint customer for us and NVIDIA, for Citibank and Amazon, and so on and so on. So this is the OEM model, I would say. And the last one, which is also very important for us, is academia, right? Having the most active academic community, having the platform used both for research, many courses given with the platform, and so research and education, of course. So these are complementary go-to-market avenues that all dedicated to make us the most used quantum software platform.
And you definitely mentioned here some of the biggest companies over the world, and I was wondering if you can share a little bit about the cost of building such quantum computers, especially given your recent funding raise of $110 million, and how is it all connected together?
The cost of building quantum computers is high. This is the reason it's a play of yes, also startups, but mainly the big tech, the Microsoft, Amazons, Googles, IBMs of the world. We are software, so the only hardware I have in the office is like teacups, right, and laptops, and not more than that. So it's more economic, I would say. I think from our perspective, the cost is just like any other software company, not more, not less. This is the way we operate. Definitely building the hardware is expensive. But from our perspective, it's not our play, and the access to quantum computers is via the clouds. We're integrated with all of them, so this is not more expensive than the usual SaaS play, I would say.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'll appreciate all the answers, and I'll give it back to Yossi to.
So Nir, super interesting and insightful. I mean, of course, I'm not a quantum computing guy, but I learned a lot nevertheless. And now to the hardest question of the all, the fun question. So first of all, do you have any advice for entrepreneurs in general, or those specifically entering the quantum computing field?
I have maybe two advice. So the first one is just do it, right? It's a perfect timing. I think this market is evolving. There are still so many opportunities. And I think, you don't need to have so much more experience in sales or product. Just do it. You can establish a company, I'm sure of that, and this is a perfect timing. The second one is be prepared to hear thousands of no's, right? This is the default. You will hear no and no and no and no and no, and eventually one yes. This is all you need. And if you know what you're going to do and you have this dedication, So be prepared, and it will pay off.
Definitely a bumpy road ahead, but rewarding nevertheless. And do you have any great mentor, someone that impacted you the most in your career or in your life?
Wow. So we have amazing investors. I will mention two of them, even though all of the others are, amazing mentors as well. So one of them is Rana Chituv, which is our first board member from Entre Capital. He's amazing. He's a mentor. He's almost not almost. He's de facto another co-founder working very hard with the company for the company, which is inspiring. The second one is Lip Bhutan, which is one of our investors. He's Intel CEO today. Obviously, he's very busy, but also super smart, very, very kind, and very helpful. Anytime you ask his help, he's there, and this is highly appreciated by us.
Amazing. And do you have any special hobbies outside of work?
I love running. I run every morning early. I also love to play football, soccer, not American football. I
The
don't
real
do it
football.
enough recently. I should do that much more. I'm afraid I don't have anything more interesting than that.
But football is definitely one of mine as well. Do you have any favorite football teams in Israel or abroad?
Yes, in Israel it's Maccabi Haifa, and abroad it's Juventus.
So we need to end this interview because I'm Maccabi Tel Aviv, but
That's a problem. That's a problem.
no, just kidding. And do you have any favorite book or movie that you read or watched recently?
Well, I don't know at this point if it's embarrassing or not, but my favorite book is still Harry Potter. What you can do. Movies, not exactly. I can see Seinfeld like 1,000 times, and I won't get enough. So it's not exactly a movie, but this is my best recommendation. If by any chance anyone in the audience have hasn't seen that yet.
You should also check out next time you come into New York, the Harry Potter Broadway show, if you haven't seen it yet. It's quite good. It's actually kind of like a sequel to the previous books, and
We'll do
quite entertaining as well.
that. Perfect. I will.
Yeah, and last question before we finishing up the interview, what keep you motivated?
I think that's an easy one, and it had nothing to do with quantum. I think being working in a startup and being one of its founders is it's kind of you are motivated by default until you lose or you win. But motivation, you have many other challenges. Motivation is not one of them.
Definitely interesting path to take and hopefully rewarding in the future. And yeah, so Nir, thank you so much for joining us today. We learned so much from you about quantum computing and how Classiq keep revolutionizing the space. Really amazing and outstanding to see. And for everybody else in the audience, stay tuned. We have another batch of episodes from the CEO and founder of Redis, Island, Sierra, CTO of NVIDIA, and a bunch of other cool companies. So stay tuned. And Nir, thank you so much again.
Thank you very much.